Mein Name ist Hanno Hauenstein, das ist ein neues Podcast-Format, was ich mache, das heißt Nullpunkt. Die Idee dahinter ist, Leute einzuladen aus Kultur, Wissenschaft, Politik und nicht nur auf der Oberfläche zu bleiben, sondern wirklich tiefer zu gehen, Fragen neu auszuloten. Eine der ersten Folgen dieses Podcasts ist mit Francesca Albanese, die UN-Sonderberichterstatterin für die palästinensischen Gebiete. Ich würde mich freuen, wenn ihr folgt auf all den Formaten, auf denen die Podcasts ausgespielt werden, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, liked, kommentiert und uns unterstützt. Das ist ein unabhängiges Format. Die Idee ist, dass wir unabhängig bleiben können. Insofern 1000 Dank für euren Support.
So, Francesca Albanese, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You are a renowned legal scholar, UN Rapporteur, international voice on the subject of Israel-Palestine. You're widely respected, but you're also fiercely criticized. Now we're talking we're in Berlin, we're in Germany, we're talking after a week or 2 weeks, so to speak, of two universities having invited you as a speaker and frequently disinvited you as a speaker. First, LMU in Munich, and following shortly after the Freie University, the Free University in Berlin. Now we're speaking today on the occasion of another replacement lecture of that second university disinviting you. That has also been cancelled. What is going on? Where is all of this coming from in your eyes?
Thank you, Hanno, for having me. Also, because it's remarkable that this is, despite the cancel culture of full inaction and the criticism and the debate that my visit has steered, there has been very few interest in the media to hear my voice, and this is a symptom of the widespread cancel culture in this country and a sort of lack of opening to critical views. So let's try to unpack it, because first of all, while it's true that universities have invited me and disinvited me, we should say that it has happened under huge pressure of political figures in this country, the Israeli pressure groups, which are very strong pretty much everywhere in the West, but in Germany, probably pulling the right or wrong cards, I don't know. But so it's in universities giving in to pressure.
The Berlin mayor spoke out against you. The signed senator of Berlin called you an anti-Semite. This has preceded the disinvitation.
Yes. So and then we will also, I think that for the German public who will listen to us, we should also address straight up front this question of, is Francesca Albanese an anti-Semite, which I normally don't engage with. I'm really bothered when people even ask me to unpack this, but in this context we have, because what I'm going to say might help other people take decisions for themselves. Sure. And look, I'm not, as I said before, I'm shocked, frankly, to see universities caving into pressure without even engaging on the substance of the matter, or even if they have engaged with the substance of the matter and they have continued to believe that they had reason to cancel the events, it's even worse, for the reason I will explain in a minute. It's shocking, but it's also, it's not my problem as a special rapporteur. I was invited as a legal expert, one of the voices who have been the most influential in exposing the crimes that Israel has committed in the occupied Palestinian territory, without denying, without downplaying the crimes that have been committed against Israeli citizens on October 7, and without downplaying, forgetting, as many do, the context in which Palestinians have been forced to live for decades under the Israeli military rule. So, because of this, I was invited to speak and to report on the facts, on the findings of my work that led me to conclude this year, as many others have done and are doing in the human rights community, genocide scholarly community, including in Israel, that Israel has committed acts of genocide in Gaza. And I also claim that this genocidal violence that Israel has unleashed against the Palestinians is leaking out into other parts of the occupied territory. Now, because of that, the entire Israeli establishment and others, including your government, sounds very irritated because they think that this is anti-Semitic. No, anti-Semitism is discriminating against Jewish people because they are Jews. And it's not me saying that. There are hundreds of scholars, of Jewish scholars on genocide and Holocaust studies and other disciplines that say that. The rest is, conflating criticism of the State of Israel for its human rights records, which is what happens with anti-Semitism. It's a tool to silence critical debate, to intimidate anyone stepping into that, and also to deflect the attention from Israel's responsibilities. But how come member states of the United Nations, whose two leaders, like the Prime Minister and the former Minister of Defense, are wanted by the ICC for war crimes and crimes against humanity, has a pending case before the ICJ, the Supreme International Court, for genocide, together with Germany. There is a pending case for supporting genocide, enabling genocide brought by Nicaragua versus Germany. How come that there has been an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice that declares Israel's occupation in the occupied Palestinian territory unlawful and to be dismantled totally and unconditionally, and as soon as possible, namely by the 13th of September this year? And this is what I'm talking about. I remind people and states of their obligation under international law. And this is why the government, and this is why all the sycophants in this country who are doing everything they can to shelter Israel from responsibilities, this is why they don't want me to talk. And again, it speaks to how deep the repression on freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of expression has become.
You've been critiqued by in other countries as well, right? Matthew Miller, the former spokesperson of the White House, has leveled similar critiques against you, and other states have done so similar as well. But it just seems to me that the level of critique that you're facing in Germany is something on a different level. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. First of all, let me clarify one thing. The states that have been the firstest critique, the first critical voices against my mandate and the firstest detractors are Israel, whom I've accused to commit international crimes, the United States and Germany, whom I've said have huge responsibilities and have enabled politically, economically, financially and militarily the crimes that Israel has committed. And Canada and France, who have a very, very problematic relationship with a pro-Israel lobby group. This is the thing. The rest of the world, frankly, yes, there is my country as well, which is not very different and unfortunately not very far from where Germany is in terms of walking the talk in protecting fundamental freedoms. Other than that, the entire world is, and the member states, and this is on record in the General Assembly, member states support my work, and there are member states who have in fact invited me themselves to go and discuss with governments, parliamentarians, and civil society and the media the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, because I am the authoritative voice inside the United Nations to speak independently of what happens. We do not need to agree. We can in fact disagree, and this is why I say this is the only country where, despite the pressure, where in the face of pressure, universities have caved in. Because even in Montreal, there has been pressure in every country, because the pro-Israel lobby, which include Christian Zionists, is very strong. So Germany is not an exception. In Germany, there is another set of reasons, probably, but this is the only country where I've been silenced in universities. And even scholars have contributed to, instead of protecting an international mandate holder, have sort of condoned the kind of accusations leveled against me. I mean, they should be ashamed, frankly, because especially those coming from legal disciplines. Right. And because it's very hard to hold the line right now, as you say, of reason, of respect for international law, and we should be talking about more in Europe about the racism, the serious racism that was the cause for anti-Semitism 100 years ago, and is the cause for anti-Semitism and anti-Palestinian racism and other forms of discrimination against Arabs, Muslims. I mean, this is what we should be talking about, and instead we keep on deflecting the attention from where it should be.
Mm. So I just want to talk to you for a minute about like the talk that you were actually supposed to give in FU. The talk is titled Legal and Forensic Perspective on the Ongoing Genocide. Again, you published multiple reports ever since October 7, 2023, in which you lay out like what has been happening in Gaza over the past like 16 months is a genocide, according to your assessment. For the people that might be on the verge of this question, who are kind of like saying, okay, there are clear indications that there's war crimes, but can we actually call it genocide? Could you just like lay out for a minute, how do you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, 3 things. The talk has that title because it's a place where Professor Eyal Weissman, who's also the founder and director of Forensic Architecture and has written a 800-plus page report with his organization called Cartography of a Genocide, mapping, just offering digital architecture evidence supporting my findings and those of others, the South Africa legal team and others. And then there will be, of course, my legal findings. Mm-hmm. So the second point is, what is genocide? Genocide is not... I know that we are in a country where people have very strong opinion and painful personal histories attached to this term. But the term genocide is a universal term, so it's not country-specific, and is not what constitutes the crime of genocide is not defined by personal opinions or personal histories or country-specific history, in fact. What constitutes genocide is specified by Article 2 of the Convention, 1948 Genocide Convention, aiming to prevent, stop, and punish genocide. So the obligations stemming from knowing when to identify genocide are quite critical in order to prevent before stopping and punishing. So genocide is a series of criminal acts that are directed against a specific group, national, ethnic, religious, or racial group as such. And the Palestinians constitute a separate group protected under the Genocide Convention as such. So members of the group who are killed, who are subjected to physical or severe physical or psychological harm, who are subjected to conditions calculated to bring about the destruction of the group, the physical destruction of the group as such, or, and this is why the title of the talk we are supposed to give tonight, or transferring of children, or prevention of birth. These acts constitute genocide if, and this is the condition to have genocide, there is intent through these acts. The crucial
point in which like the legal definition stands or falls, basically.
Yeah. So there is a double intent to an extent, in the sense that the mens rea is to be through, in those who commit genocide, is to destroy the people as such, the group as such, through these acts. And in fact, the jurisprudence, scant as it is, the International Court of Justice jurisprudence, on the one hand, focusing on the responsibility of states in the case of former Yugoslavia and in the case of Rwanda, but also through criminal proceedings in the case, of course, of both, has developed quite a bit what constitutes genocidal acts and genocidal intent. And scant as it still provide robust reasoning to argue that what Israel has committed is genocide, despite some critical issues. The point is that genocide is a process, is not an act. And the Jewish scholar who, after the Holocaust, in order not to have again the humanity committing such a monstrosity, the reason why he coined the term genocide.
Raphael Lemkin.
Yeah, correct. Raphael Lemkin. Is because it's the destruction of a group as such that is imagined, people as such. And he had imagined, if someone takes the time to read Raphael Lemkin, will understand that what he had in mind, or what he had looked at first and foremost, is settler colonialism. Like when people take control over another people's land and resources, sooner or later, through various acts, parts of this process, it will end up genociding this group by destroying. Lemkin had a broader idea of genocide, not just physical and biological destruction, but also political, financial, cultural destruction. So we have a much narrower definition. But here, in the case of and this is the third point, I've written two reports. One is called Anatomy of a Genocide, which is an X-ray of Israel's military conduct between October 23 and February 24. And I've said, and I call it Anatomy of a Genocide because it's what it is. I've looked at the facts and analyzed them legally. And then said there are reasonable grounds to conclude that Israel has committed 3 acts of genocide: killing, infliction of harm, and conditions calculated to bring about the physical destruction of the group. But because when you order, and it was the orders that have been given were leading to destruction. And this is what was intended when it has been said over and over of all the hundreds of genocidal statements that have been made, and we don't have the time to go through this right now. There is one that is more striking than any other, and it's Amalek. Amalek has a very profound meaning for the Jewish people, I understand, because it's this call to the Israelites in the Old Testament to react after an attack and say, and the order is to destroy the Amalek, the aggressor, the mother, the suckling, the baby, the camel and the donkey and everything else. So there is a call for destruction. This is why. And it has resonated powerfully across the chains of command. And this is widely documented. So last thing I would like to tell to the German audience. First of all, you don't need to kill everyone to have genocide. And by the way, genocide killing constitutes 1 act of genocide among 5, in fact many more, as they've been developed by the International Court of Justice and other tribunals. But also you don't need to have concentration camps, although Gaza is arguably a significant ghetto, and where people have not been able to move for a long time, from which they've not been able to move out for a long time. And the thing is that you don't need to, again, the people think, and I hear this over and over, including in my own country, there are no crematoria. Well, that is a particular monstrosity that the Jewish people have been scarred by during the Holocaust, but you don't need to go to that industrialized way of exterminating people to have genocide. It's the intent. And in fact, you can have genocide. We have had genocides without the real killing, like the genocide of the Aboriginal people in Australia or in Canada. No one would debate today that there have been genocides. And in fact, even people saying, we cannot say that there is genocide until there is an ICJ advisory opinion. This is so untrue. And in fact, Germany is under obligations to prevent genocide since there were the ICJ provisional measures.
They were announced in
January 2024, and then in Nicaragua versus Germany, member states, first and foremost Germany, were reminded of their obligation not to transfer weapons to a country which might be committing genocide, but also serious serious violations of international humanitarian law, meaning also war crimes.
Yeah.
So someone like Miller that you mentioned, the spokesperson of the former spokesperson of the US
administration, yeah.
Yes, frankly, he's not an authority about what international law is, and he has been a denier of crimes, because the moment you admit that there are crimes being committed, you have to intervene, take responsibility. So I would like us not to give oxygen to these people who have in fact contributed with the acts and omissions to enable the horrible situation that is now taking place in the Holy Land.
Yeah. Well, I have so many questions, but just to touch on this last point that you mentioned Germany and the responsibility of Germany to prevent after the provisional measures ordered by the ICJ, but also after following the ICJ case by Nicaragua. In your view, is Germany aiding or acting complicit in genocide as we speak, as it is continuing to deliver weapons to Israel despite all these reports and orders and everything we've seen on like a level of international human law?
Yes, because Israel receives from Germany and the United States over 95% of its weapons. So whatever crimes Israel is committing, and Germany is transferring weapons to Israel during this period with knowledge, Germany is contributing to. So this is the reality.
Well, when Olaf Scholz was just interviewed a couple of weeks ago by you, Theodor Jung, who you know, questioned on the question of the deliberation of the ICJ on genocide, that they might be actually ruling this, and he very clearly said first of all he doesn't think so, and even if they would, he doesn't want to deal with it at this point. Do you think? I mean, his argument is basically that it would be premature to judge what the ICJ is going to rule because it hasn't ruled just yet. Is there any merit to this argument in your view, or
It depends, because was he asked this question as a German citizen or as a German chancellor? Because as a German citizen, he can have all the opinions Mr. Scholz wants, but as the German chancellor, he needs to follow the law.
Right.
And international law is such that when an influential country, a country who has influence and can change, this is from the ICJ jurisprudence, when there is a plausible genocide ongoing, and this is the determination of the International Court of Justice in the case of Gaza since January last year, member states have to take all possible measures to avert, to prevent genocide. So there is a responsibility of member states. So Germany shouldn't have been should have not been transferring weapons,
nevertheless,
directly or indirectly for defensive purpose, like helmets or components of weapons to attack, from tanks to bullets to parts of airplanes or drones. No, this should have not. And also, let me take a step back, because it also shows, honestly, the hypocrisy of the system. Germany, like many other countries, was very clearly, painfully aware that Israel was already committing war crimes against the Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territory. Let aside the blockade for 17 years, during which there have been 5 wars.
Blockade of Gaza,
sure. The blockade of Gaza, which is unlawful. I know that we have so much dehumanized the Palestinians that probably in this audience is normal to imagine that they were savages there. But do German people know that Gaza had one of the highest percentage of graduated people in the world? Many of them had received also their degrees not only in one of the 11 universities in Gaza, but abroad. I mean, including in this country. I know personally one of my dearest friends from university had was an engineer who had studied and taken his PhD here. And then in 2011, he came back to Gaza because he wanted to give back to his people, because there was a blockade. You know, there have been violinists and other artists and filmmakers, documentarists and journalists and poets and laureates, and so many people have been killed, slaughtered, 17,000 children. And the reason why we don't see them in their individuality, and we imagine these masses of faceless and just desperate people who have brought havoc upon themselves. This is the dehumanization that is clearly knows no borders. It's not just in Israel and in large parts of the Israeli society, but it has traveled up to here, up to Europe. We knew that apart from Gaza, where there had been 5 wars, which had caused over 5,000 people killed between 2008, 2012, 2014, 2021, 2023, and all over 2018. Every Friday there were protests at the fence, and Israeli snipers were shooting at Palestinians in the knees, among others.
What was framed like the Great
March of Return, because they wanted to break the siege, which was unbreakable from outside and from inside, because Israel has been ensuring. And again, listen to Ehud Olmert and others, Ehud Barak, saying that Netanyahu, over his 20 years of being actively engaged in politics, has supported the consolidation of the Hamas kingdom in Gaza, because he knew, as it has been said, including by other members of this current coalition in Israel, that Hamas would be an asset to Israel, while the Palestinian Authority would be a liability, because they would ensure Hamas, with its terrorist status at international level, would ensure no discussion, no progress toward a two-state solution. But so, what about the settlements? The settlements, the colonies, are war crimes. War crimes. And the colonies have led to forced displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the past 57 years. Where was Germany to ensure that whatever remained of the possibility of the Palestinians to enjoy what, by international consensus, minus Israel until a few months ago, was that the Palestinians have an exclusive right to enjoy the right of self-determination, meaning the right to exist as a people in the form of statehood in the little that remains of historical Palestine, meaning in what didn't become Israel in 1948, which is the Gaza Strip, is Jerusalem and the West Bank. So what has Germany done to preserve the possibility of the Palestinians to be protected in a state? So, there is so much hypocrisy. And of course, the German government knew what was happening, not only because it knew from the United Nations, from special rapporteurs, from the Commission of Inquiry, from the Special Commission on Israeli Practices, and Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and Palestinian organizations and Israeli organizations. Germany knew because its diplomats on the ground have been sending cables about what was happening to the Palestinian people under brutal Israeli rule forever. And this is what Germany is. Takes no action because of whatever they conceive Staatsräson.
Staatsräson, right, of course, which is like the way in which Germany has formalized its historical responsibility for one of the biggest anti-Semitic.
But whom do you have? But whom do you have as a German? Whom do you have the responsibility for the Holocaust toward? The Jewish people, who have been 6 million of whom have been genocided, including by my own country. So excuse me, this is also my history. This is also my responsibility as a European here. And I don't take anyone, the possibility for me to live through this present, trying to do better than we have done in the past. But instead of, so let me get it right. So instead of having this sense of responsibility toward the Jewish people, the state of Germany has absolved itself from supporting the state of Israel, which is not the representative of the Jewish people. And this is something that many Jewish people, increasingly, an increasing number of Jewish people are saying around the world, because this also endangers them and threatens them. There are people who do not want to be recognized as associated to the state of Israel, including in this country. And Germany, I would like the people to realize how brutal it is, because there is a normalization of violence and repression in this country that I've not seen in the past 3 years anywhere else. And I stand behind what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I can give you evidence of it. And I've been traveling in countries that have a very repressive record and seen, and still my word has not been silenced. And still I've not been receiving remote, vague, subliminal threats that I could be arrested. So let's be honest. This is the heart of Europe, and it looks pretty scary. You cannot deny that Germany has been repressing Jewish people for their solidarity with the Palestinians. And it goes hand in hand with a thick racism that exists in this country. And today is using solidarity with the state of Israel, whatever it is, to whitewash the racism that they have and they unleashed against other minorities. This is where Germany stands today.
How would you say should Germany's because I as a German who's not Jewish, I feel like I do have a certain responsibility, maybe not to a state, but to a group of people, or in your view, how should that responsibility look like for Germans today?
Yeah, but do you think that I don't feel it? I don't feel it. This is why I'm so close. I'm so close to so many Jewish groups. In fact, wherever I go, including in this country, the event where I'm going to speak tonight is hosted by, my panel is hosted by a Jewish group. So I've been meeting with Jewish people throughout my presence here. And I've been invited to Canada, to Australia, and other places by coalition that included Jewish people. Wherever I go, I ask to meet with Jewish groups, and not just those who are sympathetic in solidarity with the Palestinians, including groups that define themselves as Zionists. Because I think that there is so much that needs to be unpacked, and so much narrative that has been fabricated, including with the support of the media, particularly in these past months. So I do have that sense of responsibility, and again, but it's not. Again, I think that what is peculiar in this country, and this is why I don't know how much is by default and how much is intentional and very hypocritical. There is this hiding behind the crimes, the horrid crimes that have been committed against the Jewish people, by the way, and the Roma in Sinti, and others, and the Nama and Herero in Namibia before.
Sure.
So Germany should be, if it's never again, it's never against to anyone else. So it's my responsibility to stand behind that commitment, never again to anyone else. Here, in line, whatever the sensitivities that my people might have, and I respect it. Those who are dying under brutal policies of ethnic cleansing, which are also entailing commission of genocidal acts, are the Palestinians. And in the name of the security of Israel, not as a state, but because its annexation plan and its continuous expansion into territory that remain to the Palestinian people, an entire people is being erased. So let's be honest, Israel now is saying as loud and clear as ever, they don't want the Palestinians in the land comprised between the river and the sea. They say that. Netanyahu goes to the General Assembly, brandishing this map that shows no Gaza Strip, West Bank and East Jerusalem, and no one raised an eyebrows. Then people in the street chants from the river to the sea. Has anyone asked any Palestinian or any Jewish person chanting, or any German chanting these chants, what do you mean? Because I know that what people say in this country, because this is so anti-Semitic, because it's going to erase the Jewish people from the land. No. If you only took the time to listen, as many of us human rights experts do, what they say, it's a land free from apartheid, from occupation and genocide. And this is absolutely not anti-Semitic. And by the way, it's also been upheld by courts in Europe. So you can go as deep. You as a society can continue to nosedive into this climate of repression. I'm just wondering, where are the constitutional lawyers? Where are the people who realize that this is so brutal. Hanno, you are the only journalist who has asked me for an interview. And again, this is not normal. With all the attention that it has created, because in the Netherlands and in Norway and in Denmark, I was on the newspaper front page through, Here no one wants to talk. Fear dominates and controls the mind of the people. This is very scary to me.
I want to go back to something we spoke a little bit earlier about, or we touched on earlier about, which is basically the functionality of these institutions, of the ICJ, of the ICC. So after the provisional measures were ordered, they were ordered repeatedly, right? I mean, like once in January, then again in May.
March and May,
exactly. And the ICJ had like this report that very clearly, crystal clearly designated the occupation, both the occupation and the settlements, as illegal. Now, like, as you said, Germany has not changed its policy.
No.
Quite the opposite. It continued to deliver quite significant support. Does the framework still work? The framework of international law is there like a need for something else? Because it seems as if, if anything has been shown pretty clearly over this past year, it's that like there's somewhat of a collapse of this institution in terms of its effectiveness.
Yes, but you see, this is why I say maybe I'm reading too much into the past and the future. But when I heard that interview with Chancellor Scholz about him saying, no, we need to wait for the ICJ, as if Germany had ever respected an ICJ decision. In 2004, the ICJ advisory opinion, and I hope that the non-lawyers listening to us appreciate that advisory opinion is just a technical term that the court, to qualify this act of the court when it intervenes on a matter of law, of international law, on a substantive matter where there is no active litigation among the parties. No, it's not one state versus another, but it's been, for example, the opinion has been triggered as a last case by the International Court of Justice on the legality of the occupation. But however, 21 years ago, the court interpreting peremptory norms of international law that cannot be violated or derogated, less facing consequences, concluded that the construction of the wall that Israel was advancing in the occupied Palestinian territory, and which would result in the annexation of at least 12% of the occupied West Bank, was unlawful because in breach of Palestinian right of self-determination. What does Germany... and they also recalled the obligations of member states under law of state responsibility to not to recognize the consequences of an illegal act, not to aid and assist the state which was responsible for the illegal act, and act to lead in a way aiming to lead to the cessation of the illegal act, and so the reparation were also offered. What has Germany done? So yes, there was a decision. Now there has been the International Court of Justice advisory opinion, which has been the most groundbreaking decision. The court has said not just that Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful, and not because it violates international humanitarian law here and there, because it arrests children, because it demolishes homes, because it tortures people who shouldn't have been imprisoned, and because maintains, again, a military dictatorship, because the Palestinians are under Israeli military law, written by soldiers, enforced by soldiers, and reviewed in military courts by soldiers. I mean, the Palestinian people are the only people who, for 57 years, have been under military law since the Second World War. It's incredible. And in the face of this, no one acted, and in the past, and no one is acting now. The Court of Justice has said this presence is so unlawful that is to be dismantled. The troops have to be taken out. The military occupation is to be taken out. The colonies the settlements must be dismantled, and the control of natural resources is to be relinquished. There is it's so crystal clear. And why so? Because it's tantamount to anything but that the court has said in everything but word, annexation. And it amounts to racial discrimination and apartheid. What else needs to be said?
Right.
What has Germany done to comply with it? Which, by the way, is binding upon Germany and German private entities and individuals. In the sense, whatever now is administered by Israel militarily or through civilian businesses across the Green Line into the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip or in East Jerusalem is unlawful if dealt with through Israel. So companies investing in the occupied Palestinian territory, pension funds, banks, supply chains, research institute, universities maintaining partnership which might have a detrimental impact on the rights of the Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territory.
If, for example, a German university cooperates with Ariel University and like...
It's illegal.
Right.
And it was illegal even before. So it's not... Okay. But now it's crystal clear. This is why I think I keep on telling young people, don't feel... I mean, this is the moment to act because we have the norms. And many people have been fighting to have these rights enshrined in our international system, in our constitutions. And we have law enforcement mechanisms. When they are failing, there are courts. But I understand that courts have been, I've been talking to people here who have expressed their fear that the judicial system is not working to ensure free and unfettered access to justice, which is despicable. But again, it proves that, it would be really sad to conclude that German courts are not willing or able to ensure justice to German citizens trying to pursue either companies or universities or government officials or Israelis themselves for crimes that have been committed in the occupied Palestinian territory, or the damage through civil suits that have been done to them. So at the international level, this is happening. There are many countries in which both civil society, for example, think of Norway, the Netherlands, Denmark, and the UK in Europe, where civil society is suing the government for its responsibility in enabling and providing weapons to Israel. Right. But also there are other cases, and think of the Hindra Jab Foundation. The problem in Germany is that most of these cases are decided not just in courts, but also based on the debate that is created, because eventually judges also read newspapers. And in a country like this, where everything is silence, I even wonder how much ordinary Germans know about what has been done in their name and what is happening to the Palestinians. I don't know if they would stand behind the German government.
Well, there was just a case leveled against BAFA, the regulatory authority that's supposed to make sure that Axel Springer, a German company, doesn't allow its Israeli subsidiary to facilitate the sales and rentals of houses in the occupied West Bank, which would be one of those cases where I think it's pretty clear that there is a clear transgression here, illegal one. But it seems like this case isn't really going anywhere right now. But I wanted to ask you, the latest report that you published asserts that those genocidal acts that you see happening in Gaza might actually spill over to the West Bank. I've just been to the West Bank for a week. I came back last week. I've been to Jenin. I've been to Tulkarem. And I've been going there for close to 15 years at this point. It hasn't been that level of severe from my personal point of view. I haven't seen that level of destruction that I've seen in Jenin refugee camp just now, ever before. Yeah. Where do you see this happening most acutely? Where do you see an actual danger of genocidal acts spilling over to the West Bank?
So first of all, since I became a special rapporteur in 2022, I've seen an increasing spike of violence in the West Bank steadily so, in terms of the Israeli Supreme Court validating the forced displacement of 1,200 Palestinians from South Hebron Hills in occupied West Bank, so that the army could train itself into a firing zone.
Like a firing zone, yeah.
Yeah, but excuse me, have your firing zone in your own territory. I mean, and why do you have to go in occupied territory, which is unlawful, you see? And this is the thing, that the entire Israeli system, the judiciary, the parliament, the executive, have been working together to advance Israel's annexation plan. That this is what the state is geared toward, and it's fully documented when it comes to the court system by B'Tselem and this Israeli human rights organization, which is going to be harshly punished now with the new law that Israel is passing.
The law of like taxation of
80%,
right?
up to 80% taxation over foreign funds given to Israeli human rights organization. This is going to destroy the human rights community, which needs resources. I mean, in as much as we can declare austerity, we still need to buy our food and, send our kids to school. Now, the point is that, since particularly, this new government coalition came on board, the violence against Palestinians has been unprecedented. There have been pogroms, attacks by violent mobs, armed settlers, ideological settlers, toward defenseless Palestinian villages. And there have been between 12 and 16 instances of these attacks where cars, houses had been incinerated, people severely beaten, and there is no one to protect the Palestinians, you see, because the Palestinian Authority is not there. Have you ever seen the Palestinian Authority intervening to protect the Palestinians? No, because under the Oslo agreements, the only purpose of the Palestinian Authority is to maintain security for Israel, so that Israel doesn't have to intervene. It's that brutal. So this is why I understand that the Palestinians might resent what I'm saying, but I've been reporting on the violations committed by Hamas and the Palestinian Authority against the Palestinians themselves as part of this working within the encroaching occupation and apartheid that Israel has established. So it was already very bad. Between the May 2022 and September 2023, 460 Palestinians had been killed mostly in the West Bank, over 400 of them, including many children. And about during the same period, about 50 Israelis. So the situation was tragic, and it has not stopped since October 7, because while the eyes of everyone, even without resolve, were on Gaza, 700 Palestinians have been killed in occupied West Bank, including 170 children. It's huge in 1 year. So, and now this as of when the ceasefire was declared in Gaza, by the way, it's not been a ceasefire, because over 100 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza while they were trying to return to the north, to the rubbles they've been left with. The mobile homes have not been delivered. The aid has not been delivered in its entirety. Israel has a long history of violating ceasefires, but this has been particularly brutal. And in the meantime, the violence against the West Bank has increased. So I had already, in October, you are right, I had already sounded the alarm. I was right to say there are patterns of violence that have been occurring in Gaza that are replicating in the West Bank. And the statements coming from Israeli leaders and military leaders, political and military leaders, and others, part of the population, which are supporting what the state is doing, make me fear that this is also genocidal incitement, because they were talking of doing Galant, for example, to prepare to do to the West Bank what had happened to Gaza. Why? And so that the Palestinians would have to move out of the West Bank into Jordan, and this has become, and there would be mass destruction. And in fact, there have been mass killing, there had been mass arrests and detention, up to over 9,000 people, many of them without in any charge, without, just taken from their homes, kidnapped. This is why when I say, when you talk about Israeli hostages, of course they are illegally detained and they should return home. They should have never been captured. And so the Palestinians, why do we have this selective moral compass?
Right.
So this has been happening and it has escalated. So wherever the destruction of hospitals, of homes, which has escalated as of the ceasefire, because the Jenin camps has been raided in large part, Tulkarem, Nablus, in the Tuba in the north, and so the north is being destroyed by the army. The south, where there is
40,000 people have been displaced out of the camps, like huge numbers, really, like
correct. You have most updated figures than I do, and also the south is being attacked. It's a different demography. There are primarily pastoralist and Bedouin communities who have been repressed and not permitted to build in that piece of land for the past 20 years, and so there has been an attack, a simultaneous attack by the settlers who lead and the army who covers. It's brutal. It's really brutal. Plus UNRWA, which is the UN presence that could continue to secure the distribution of aid, the distribution of whatever is needed in this critical phase of emergency, is being dismantled. So while this all happens, I also see the vultures, the humanitarian and political vultures over the skies of the West Bank. So instead of thinking forward according to international law, which is end the genocide or end whatever the International Court of Justice recognizes as a plausible genocide, then end the occupation as the ICJ has decided, and then end apartheid, as the ICJ has also recognized existing in the occupied Palestinian territory, we are discussing of how the other countries will reoccupy Gaza, will rebuild Gaza, will move the people out of Gaza. Are we in the 15th century or what?
Yeah. I want one more question about this report that you published in October. It's called "Genocide as Colonial Erasure," and you, even in this interview, repeatedly, I'm just like to make sure we take everyone with us, because we're like having a very advanced.
Yeah, because we lose the German very easily.
Yes.
If you lose the right word, I turn off the.
I just want to make sure, for the language you call the settlements colonies, and like
I need to assuage, to make the reality comfortable to German ears. Of course, German cousins.
I just want to make sure that we are like we are still catching up with you. Like the framework of settler colonialism is one that is disputed, of course. And like, can you just like say what led you to the conclusion of like making sure, or why is it important to you to apply that framework in the reality that we speak about?
No, it's just to be, and thank you for the opportunity, because your fellows better than I do. So let's make it all digestible. And it's not about using that framework. The framework I use is the law of self-determination, which protects the right of a people as a people. Without that right to exist and determine themselves politically, legally, economically, and enjoy the resources of the land and practice the religion the people, or the religions the people want, the culture they want. Without this, all the other rights are simply an exercise in intellectual rhetoric. This is also, I want to say, retroactively for what I've been working on, or international community works on, in places where, we support children's rights and women's rights, or we reform the Palestinian Authority. These are all life-saving ways not to deal with a core problem, which is Palestinians have been under an occupation for 57 years without even recounting the story of what has happened to Palestine. The occupied Palestinian territory, again, Gaza Strip, West Bank and East Jerusalem, have been under an occupation which has served as a vehicle to acquire illegally the land of the Palestinians while displacing the Palestinians and putting them in segregated areas. Look at the map. For those who do not believe me, please look at the OCHA map, UN map, or even look at B'Tselem map if you are more attuned with Israeli truth tellers. Look at this. Palestinians have been segregated, dispossessed, displaced, and while Israel was acquiring the land's resources for the benefit of its own people, and those Israel recognizes the sovereignty of Jewish Israelis only as by the law by 2018. Between the river and the sea, the nation-state law. I mean, it's not me. Read to what Israel says and do. Take them seriously. So, and the taking of the land and resources while displacing and segregating and subjugating the people is the hallmark of settler colonialism. And it's not surprising because 500 years of European history from Christopher Columbus forward have been marked by these settler colonial practices. Colonialism is a European practice, first and foremost, that has subjugated other people in a way that, we are talking, of course, of what has happened in recent centuries. But so 500 years have completely shaped our DNA as a people, as a continent. And so it has not entirely gone, because somewhat we do justify the civilizing mission that we how much we enjoy white saviorism. What we bring to the others, we aid others, we take the others by hand toward development, and this is not different. You see how people keep on talking of the Palestinians, that they need to have a government in place decided by someone else. This is not self-determination. So why do I use the settler colonial framework? Because this is historical. And by the way, when I say I have this discourse in the 1967 borders, this is because my mandate only covers the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. But I encourage my German cousins to go and read Jabotinsky, Theodor Herzl, Ben Gurion, and others, the founding fathers of Israel, and they were talking of colonizing Palestine. Palestine was European Jewish colonial project far before the arrival of the Third Reich. Because the Jewish, and this is the truth that no one really talks about, the Jewish people have been discriminated for centuries in Europe. They have been persecuted. There is no question about that. Now the problem is, whatever the solution has been found, and this is history, the price has been paid not only by the Jewish people through the Holocaust. The price has been paid by the Palestinians.
You're saying through the establishment of the State of Israel as a kind of refuge for people who have been persecuted by anti-Semitism.
Absolutely. They had no place where to go. Because this is the other thing. We think that after the Holocaust, the Jewish people were welcome wherever they went. No, they continued to be discriminated against. And places like Australia, the US, and Great Britain refused to give refuge, to offer refuge to the Jewish people, to the survivors of the Holocaust. And the point is, they had no other place where to go. And this is why I say it was an incredible injustice and a horror. It was a genocide that had been committed against the Jewish people, and they needed to be protected. However, it's not that they had no other place to go, but this refugeehood walked on the heels of a project that had started before. And there was no consideration before or after for the rights of the non-Jewish people in the land. So I'm not saying now how we reserve it now. So also, it's not that the founding fathers of Israel never thought to have a movement, support a movement of Jewish people from Europe as migrants. There was this idea of taking the land taking as much land as possible for a Jewish state, which came to be in 1947, when the United Nations, made of 51 or 53 states, mostly what I call the settler colonial bloc, and some Arab states which objected it, and with some Latin American states. It's the reality is that the Palestinian self-determination has never been a consideration. So there was the decision to partition Palestine between the Jewish states and the Arab states. And when the Jewish people, mostly from Europe, owned 6% of the land, and 94% was owned by the non-Jewish people of the land. So again, you see, there has been violence, has engendered other violence, and now why it's important to know history? Because we need to try to do the best thing we can without continuing to victimize those who have been victimized accidentally and who had nothing to do with the European Holocaust. This is not the Palestinians' responsibility. Our Jewish people have, until 1947-48, been protected and been living in the Arab world like brothers and sisters. I mean, there are many books that have been written on these lives in common, as Menachem Klein calls it. So, and we don't want to look back at history because it's very uncomfortable for us.
So you're saying like the settler colonial framework is not one you invented, but it's one that is local to that space ever since the inception, actually before the inception of the State of Israel already.
Yes, yeah. The thing is that until the 60s and 70s, it was not considered unlawful because most of the world was colonized. In fact, I mean, I was reading about a document that is part of the European Union and is in annex to one of the treaties founding the European Union that talks about how to handle the colonies. So again, we need to deal with our colonial past, because our colonial past, as German's history tells us, is replenished of repressive practices, including genocides. The genocide of the Jewish people and the Roma and Sinti and others is the second genocide that Germany has committed in the span of 30 years. This should be thought for reflection.
Right, and the first genocide committed in today's borders of Namibia has taken a long time to actually been recognized as such. Right, I mean, like it's like only recently has Germany recognized that it has committed a genocide in that area, and like it hasn't really done it to the fullest vocabulary as
because then with the full vocabulary would follow responsibilities under international law and reparations, and Germany is as far as I understand, is not keen to offer reparations to the Nama and the Herero. I wonder why.
They're not right. I mean, like I think it would open a Pandora's box of. I mean, that's their rationality.
Yes,
I mean,
dealing with the past.
Right. I'm wondering, like to come a little bit to the present right now. The U.S. Administration. Okay, the U.S. administration, the Biden administration had like passed sanctions on settlers, on a number of outposts. Some extremists, like I think relatively few numbers if you compare it to the entire settlement enterprise, which is like, I think around 700,000 settlers live in the West Bank today. But, late last year, they also sanctioned organizations like Amana, which is like a construction organization that really is responsible for a lot of the settlements being built over there. Now Trump has reversed all that. When I was there just now, like there was actually talk of like Trump maybe acknowledging the kind of de facto annexation you already mentioned earlier. I mean, where are we right now? Do you think like what do you make of the US's approach to the West Bank at the moment?
The colonization and the colonization of Palestine, of what remains of Palestine, is no longer just an Israeli policy, but has officially become a US foreign policy. But look, the fact that the US says they want to do that, it doesn't mean that it doesn't make any lawful. It remains very unlawful, and this is why it should be a red line, another red line. But we're not very good with red lines, we Europeans. But it should be a red line for many. Look, in the aftermath of this announcement of the Riviera Plan, I was just coming out of an
Trump
airplane.
wanting to own Gaza, basically.
Yeah, I just landed in Denmark, and someone passed me a newspaper, and so I read on my way to a press conference, and I was asked, what do you think about this? And again, I said, it's nonsense, which doesn't mean that it's not dangerous, because it's so unlawful, immoral, after genocide, or after killing 60,000 people, including 17,000 children, leveling all universities, most hospitals, decimating Gaza, destroying everything that the Palestinians in Gaza need to live to survive. They are proposing this is also going to bring further instability in the region, because the United States, of course, is going to put more pressure on Jordan and Egypt, threatening, of course, to withdraw funds, financial support, and creating instability in the region. So I stand now, a few weeks later, I stand behind that analysis, and I also stand behind my call to the other 191 member states of the United Nations, including Germany, to understand that they have nothing to gain from this way of behaving, because by condoning, by tolerating this, they would actively contribute to the dismantlement of the multilateral order, which is premised upon simple but clear rules, and if they are not supported and applied in their universality, they won't work. And already that much of that system has been eroded. But also, what are we telling the young generations about the international law and human rights? No, it's really a critical point. So I'm not totally pessimistic. I keep on telling us, my connational Antonio Gramsci used to say, pessimism the intellect, optimism of the will, because I think that this is not the time to sit idle on our sofa being self-defeating, self-defeatist. I think it's time to act, and from all paths and walks of life, we should take responsibility for the deterioration of the human rights system that so far has protected not all of us, but many of us, particularly in this part of the world. We Europeans have probably taken our fundamental freedoms for granted. They're not for granted, clearly.
Right. What do you think would justice for Palestinians look like today, in terms of like reparative justice, legal justice, like just like a kind of making up for all the injustice that has been leveled against them?
Look, I try to be as inclusive as I can, because I say, eventually, I don't think that justice for Palestinians means injustice for the Israelis. They will continue to enjoy their rights, but not privileges. So and resolving the question of Palestine in line with international law, in principle, it's very easy, in the sense it's very clear what stems from international law. Ending genocidal violence today, and it's not over. Ending the occupation, so short term, ending genocide; medium term, by September this year, ending occupation, and then end apartheid, so that everyone who calls that land home can enjoy it with rights and freedoms and not privileges. And it doesn't matter one state, two states, but everyone should be able to enjoy fundamental rights. And it can happen, because when you see how not many, but they shouldn't be invisibilized. There are Israelis who are really struggling and taking great risk upon themselves to stand against the genocide, like the historians who have shed light, and like Amos Goldberg, Omer Bartov, Lee Mordechai, or Ras Sigal. Ras Sigal, but Ras doesn't live in Israel anymore, but he has family there, of course. And I mean, and there are also journalists and others and civil society. They are really for the enjoyment of human rights of all. So this is why I think that it will be liberating for the Israelis as well, where they will not be indoctrinated anymore as a systematically to an ideology that has turned them into pawns of a political, like a political doctrine predicated upon violence as the only way to survive. So, and yeah, I think that it can happen, but we should all act with compassion and wisdom. This is what I said on October 7, and I've been predicating after that. There should be, look, I know that for the Israelis, October 7 is not in the past. It has been October 7 every day, and not just for those who have lost their family members, for those who have lost, who have hostages still held in Gaza. But the question is, do you understand, for the love of your beloved one, do you understand that Palestinians are humans and they have love for life as well? You have been indoctrinated to believe that Palestinians want to kill you and this is their raison de vivre. It's not true. It's not true. We need to rehumanize each other, Hanno, and this is so difficult when even us from outside are not helping at all.
Well, I think you've been like a very powerful voice of like trying to actually advocate for that type of like rehumanization. Thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.